Her Sports Rugby Show, brought to you by Energia. Think of the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Her Sports Interpro Rugby Show, brought to you in association with Energia. Think of the possibilities. This is the first episode of the series and we'll look back at the action from last week and also preview what's coming up this weekend. We're joined by former Ireland international Hannah Tyrrell. Hannah, it's great to have you back after Christmas.
Yeah, great to be here and talk about this.
So in relation to the Interpros, you saw lots of the action. You were down at the match with Munster and Ulster. For those, I suppose, to start off first, who mightn't be familiar with the Interpros, what are they and how are they different to the Energia AIL?
I suppose like the Energia AIL is a club-based league, and it's played over a much longer season, and you have your league format and winners at the end of it. I suppose the Interpros are an opportunity for players who have played really well and kind of stood out in the Energia AIL league to represent their province and kind of make that step up and see if they can produce and put in the same performances at the next level, and a lot of these players would be players who would also have hopes to go on and represent Ireland and put on a green jersey. But for some, the Interpros and playing for your province is the highest level that they will get to, and it's a huge honour, Growing up, when you're watching rugby, it's the provincial teams and the men's side of things that we see. So for Ulster, Leinster, Munster and Connacht, these girls are maybe growing up seeing these on TV all the time, and it's great for them to have an opportunity to pull on these jerseys themselves. And the Interpros only happen once a year, and this year's format is just each of the provinces play each other once, and at the end of it we will have an interprovincial winner. And based off of the last tournament we had, Munster coming into this as reigning champs, and they beat out Leinster in a hotly contested match in that final in the last tournament. So, it's always just a great opportunity for players to get some more game time, which is always is needed, but also see if they can make that transition into the next step up, and then potentially can they go from there and put their hand up for an Ireland cap come the Six Nations.
And in terms of the competition, like we were at the Leinster Connacht game at the weekend, and there definitely seemed to be a lot of people there, great attendance, great atmosphere. Like, have you seen the attendances and support grow over the past couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even since when I got my first Leinster cap, I think it was back in 2018, maybe 2017, I'm not actually sure, but the tournament itself has changed and grown, and previous tournaments we saw that there was actually home and away fixtures that were happening for both teams, which is great to see, because again, it's more game time at this higher level and at this higher standard, and giving players, as I said, that opportunity to see if they can fit in at this level. But yeah, look, obviously the media coverage, and even the provinces themselves and clubs have been pushing for people to attend and achieve tickets. And the last number of years, the games have been on TG Ceathair, which is great to see. And this year, all games are televised either on TG Ceathair and BBC Northern Ireland. So it means that if you can't travel to a game, you can still switch on the telly. And of course, that's going to, garner interest. And then when it comes to the Six Nations, you'll be able to spot a lot of these players that, put their hand up in these Interpros. So it is great to see, and I have seen over the years that attendances have grown and interest has grown, and that's thanks to the media opportunities and, as I said, that TV coverage that it's getting.
Yeah, no, it definitely was like a really good competition at the weekend, and we know there's some great upcoming matches as well. So definitely something people should tune into or attend if they can. In relation to, I suppose, people playing for different teams, we have Sonia and Aoife McDermott on opposing teams. We're assuming as sisters that they're coming from the same area. So in relation to players being selected, can you give us a bit of an insight, how different people end up playing for different teams?
Yeah, of course. So for me, obviously, I was born in Dublin, always supported Leinster growing up, played for a Dublin club, and so when an opportunity came to be part of the provinces, I only ever wanted to play for Leinster. Mm-hmm. For other players, there's maybe been opportunities where they have parents who are from other provinces or other counties than those that they were born in, and for the McDermott sisters, Aoife and Sonia, they played for Railway in Dublin. Aoife obviously has numerous Ireland caps, and they're raised in Dublin, but they have Sligo heritage, and they're often spending time back home in Sligo, but also, for Sonia, I suppose she felt like her roots were much more connected to Connacht, There might be an element of, Connacht were the team that actually approached her first before Leinster, and they end up playing for two different provinces. And, it's a great story to see. It's the first time they got to play each other at the weekend. Obviously, Aoife slightly happier, coming off it. But I think it was Sonia's debut as well. So that was obviously a really nice and special day for her. And look, they're not the first, Sonia's not the first player that has represented a province different from what she has done in the past. We've seen the likes of Larissa Muldoon, Sene Nupu and Nikki Coy, who have played for one province previously, and then because of either work or living arrangements, they've actually switched provinces and played for another. So Nikki and Larissa played for Ulster and then represented Leinster, and Sene moved from Connacht to Leinster. And it does happen, and it's nice to see, but I suppose as long as you're willing to play for that province and represent and feel like you're part of that province and that they're happy to have you in that team, I don't see a real issue with it. You don't really see too many Munster players moving though, and that's one thing I would say, is that they are very much, they're from Munster and they would hate to represent anybody else.
Yeah, I guess some of it is really down to where the opportunities come. We saw it on the pitch, we were like, that player's from here, or they play with that club, but definitely about that opportunity, and you're talking about experience and game time. Yeah,
absolutely. And I remember a story years ago, the great Ellie Miller, one of the best Irish players we've ever produced. She's from Laois, she grew up in Laois her whole life, and she said that when she got into rugby, she joined quite later at age 26, that Connacht were the team that approached her first, and so she went with Connacht and ended up playing with them. And then it was only after Leinster realised she was pretty good, and they were like, oh no, we've missed the boat here a little bit, And in fairness to Ali, she stuck with that province for her whole career, and it was a massive boost to Connacht rugby at the time. And that's just the way it goes sometimes, where, as you said, where the opportunities come from.
Look, you see it on the men's side as well. It's just trying to give people an insight into how the competition works. So we saw some club mates face each other as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What's that like when you're playing with someone one week on the club scene, and then you're going to play them in the Interpros and you have to line up against them? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's nice, it's different, I suppose. When, as you say, you're lining up with your teammates week to week and you're getting to know them really, really well, and then if you're lucky enough, you go off and you play Ireland together as well. But sometimes with interprovincials, you're from different areas, and we particularly see this in Dublin clubs, the likes of Belleville, Railway and Blackrock, because Dublin obviously is attracting not just obviously good players, but for other work and living arrangements and stuff like that. So the likes of Blackrock and that Leinster Connacht game at the weekend, Leinster had the likes of Hannah O'Connor, who'd be really, really good friends with Laurie Feely, who lined up in the front row with Connacht. And it's nice to see, you get a good enjoyment of it. You're obviously frenemies in that instant where you want your team to win, but you're able to have a bit of a laugh with them around that. But, these ladies are competitive, I know them quite well, and regardless of how friendly they are on and off the pitch, I think they both would have wanted to win at the weekend, and obviously that didn't happen.
Sometimes you can be more competitive with your friends, you do want to beat them. So as you said, everyone is competitive on that pitch.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's it. You want to be the best, and as I said, a lot of these players will be putting their hand up for international selection come the Six Nations, and unfortunately sometimes your best friends in rugby are the ones who play the same position as you, and therefore you have to be competitive because you want to be one step ahead, and you might be fighting with your best friend for a jersey in that regard, and that can be quite difficult to see. I know Dorothy Wall and Hannah O'Connor play in the back row together for Blackrock, and then Hannah plays for Leinster and Dorothy plays for Munster, and coming into the Six Nations, those will be fighting for a spot in the back three, and as I said, friends off the pitch but not on it during the Interpros.
For sure. So in relation to the Leinster Connacht game, that was the first one up. The score was 38-10 to Leinster. Pretty competitive game, quite tight in the first half an hour, and then it seemed when Leinster kind of got the first score on the board, they kind of kept coming. But Connacht definitely put in a good performance against them. What were your overall thoughts on that match? Yeah, look, obviously going into the game, Leinster had contested the last Interpro final, and before that they had won 2 in a row, and so going into it that Leinster are always going to be a very strong squad, and the squad they put out was actually quite interesting, and they left a little bit of firepower on the bench, which was interesting to see, and it paid a lot of dividends for them in the game.
you know, and on paper it looked like it should be an easy win, and actually looking at the result, 38-10 is a fairly comprehensive win, but that scoreline doesn't reflect how the game went. And you know, I think the first half of the game, Connacht really came out guns blazing, and their defensive setup was really, really good, and they were very well coached there in that regard, and they got an awful lot of turnovers. You know, Leinster was still the very much dominant team, but they actually just couldn't get that final pass or that final execution to get some points on the board. You know, Connacht held them up a couple of times. There was a brilliant try-saving tackle from Ava Ryder in the corner, you know, and I was actually pleasantly surprised to see how well they were managing this Leinster attack. You know, who are coached really well by Tanya Rosser, who wants to play that up-tempo game with loads of offloads. But eventually, you know, that dominance paid off, and once they kind of got that first try and the floodgates opened a little bit. And, you know, Connacht never stopped trying. They persevered and they gave 100%. And I was delighted to see Orla Dixon get that score in the corner from a beautiful crossfield kick from Nicole Fowley. But at the end of the day, Leinster just were too strong. Connacht maybe suffered a little bit from fatigue, particularly towards the end of the second half. And as I mentioned, that Leinster backline, that impact, they have the likes of Elise O'Byrne-White come on and scoring with her first touch, and Molly Scuffle-McCabe, an Ireland international, to come off the bench. You know, she was a bright spark for them. It was a fairly solid win for Leinster, but I can imagine that going into next week's game, if they start slowly like that, there'll be a lot of damage done. Yeah,
no, I was definitely really impressed with Connacht's defence, as you mentioned. Like Leinster, it seemed like you had to stand up and see had they got a try, had they not got a try. They were so close so many times, but Connacht, you know, really put in a good effort to holding them up, and I was glad to see that they did get a couple of scores of their own, because it definitely felt like they deserved it. Aoife Dalton was the Vodafone player of the match. She was everywhere. What did you think of her performance?
Yeah, look, she's playing quite a tricky position there at 13. You know, for me, it's pivotal, not just in attack in terms of inviting your back three into the game, but defensively 13 for me in the back line is the most difficult position, because you're the target focus for attacking teams in terms of what they do with the ball, you know, and you're the one who has to make those quick reads. And we see it in the men's game with Gary Ringrose. He's very, very good at that, and I was really, really impressed by Aoife Dalton. She's quite a young player, getting her first cap for Leinster. You know, she was lucky in that regard that she was playing outside a vastly experienced player in Jenny Murphy, who I'm sure was talking to her all the time. But yeah, she was everywhere. She was putting in big tackles, she was making the right passes, and I think what makes a really good player is someone who does the simple things right. She didn't do anything flashy in the game, you know, and there's no big highlights of her, you know, throwing an offload out the back or anything else where we're like, wow, but she just did the simple things well. And that is massive for your team to click and gel and to get those scores. And she was involved in a load of those scores going wide, particularly Ella Roberts' first one, and for Jenny Murphy and Katie Whelan to get involved in their tries too.
Yeah, Jenny Murphy got a couple of tries over the line.
Yeah, look, great to see Jenny back in a blue jersey. You know, she's had her struggles over the years with injuries and stuff like that. She converted to back row at one point, but she's back in her original 12 jersey. Look, she's been a stalwart for Ireland in her career, and you know, she's a big name player, and she's well able to do it and well capable of this standard still. And yeah, she's big, she's physical, and she took her 2 tries very, very well. A little bit of footwork thrown in there, I'm sure she'd be delighted, but it's just great to see her back up and healthy. And as I said, there was a huge mix of youth and a lot of players getting their first cap there, so it was nice to have that experience around that with the likes of Jenny Murphy.
Yeah, no, that's why, like, I thought she looked comfortable, and I thought she definitely instilled confidence in some of the other players that were there, and you could see her kind of evaluating the game and just making sure that everything was going right from a team perspective. Another player that you've spoken a lot about, I suppose, from the Energia AIL perspective was Dana O'Brien. She got 2 assists and a solid off the boot. Did she impress you?
Yeah, look, I feel like I'm her number 1 fan at this stage, to be honest. You know, I just think she's turning into a really, really solid 10, and that season of AIL rugby has just done her confidence the world of good. And as I said, players always just want to play and try and improve their game, and for her to be able to play in a team that was quite successful this season with Old Belvedere, coming third in the league, you know, she got a lot of minutes and opportunities to actually grow as a 10, and I think that's a big thing. The 10 position has been a tricky one for Ireland over the past number of years, because it takes an awful lot of time to settle into 10 and be a good 10 and develop and learn the role that is there in order to not just boss around her forwards but also be able to open up that back line. And for me, she has just gotten better and better every time I see her, and she was directly involved in a number of tries at the weekend. She had a beautiful break herself. Her kicking is a huge addition for her, and you know, I've no doubt that she has cemented herself as the starting 10 for come the Six Nations. Now look, I know there'll be a couple of other players who mightn't be too happy with me saying that, but she kind of is the standard bearer for me right now, and there's still a couple of games in the Interpros for other 10s to step up, but yeah, like she's young, she's still a lot of potential there to develop and get even better, but it's great to have her there, and I think we need that continuity at 10.
One to watch for sure. And you're talking about kicking there. I thought Nicole Fowley played a good game for Connacht. Accuracy seemed pretty good throughout the game. What did you think of her performance? Yeah,
look, Nicole's been around a very long time, and I think for her, and she'd tell you herself, her biggest strength would be her kicking game, you know, and we saw that in the Energia AIL. She was the third highest point scorer, you know, and got Galwegians out of trouble an awful lot of times with her kicking. But you know, she wouldn't have had a lot of front football. Connacht had very little possession, but she was well able to use her exits well. She got them on the board with a penalty early on, and then it was her crossfield kick that allowed Orla Dixon to score. And it was nice to see Connacht get that and be rewarded for their defensive pressure and also be that attacking threat, and she nailed the conversion as well. So I'm sure she's feeling a little bit revitalised, and you know, would again be hoping that her international days aren't over, and would be sticking her hand up for a place there too.
Tell me, has she got a background in GAA?
I actually don't know. I'm sure she does, but I think she's been rugby through and through for a long time, but I'm sure she played at some point. I'll find out for next week.
Plenty of people have a crossover, obviously, including yourself, so two sports that complement each other, but I just was like, surely she played football as well.
She probably did. I actually think she was a soccer player.
Interesting. We'll have to get onto her and get the full insight. So there's two good stories from that game. We had Jenny Murphy and Clara Barrett. Jenny had been involved in coaching Clara. Like, what do you think of that story?
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think another thing to note, as you mentioned, is that Connacht team like put in that big defensive shift, and eventually, unfortunately, were overwhelmed a little bit, and the scoreline got away from them. But they actually had a serious number of teenagers in there, and Clara Barrett being one of them. I think they had 4 teenagers in their team, and it's something like 14 players in their entire squad are under the age of 22. So you have to take that into account, that when you look at the Leinster squad, who have numerous players who have not only provincial caps but international caps, that this Connacht team have a lot of potential there, and just again need more game time, and for a lot of them would have been their first step up into this kind of higher level of standard than the league. But yeah, look, that you love a feel-good story in rugby, and it's great to see that, you know, once they were kind of seen as this role model, and now you're playing alongside them in the same competition. But Clara Barrett's only 18, she came off the bench to make her debut, and I'm sure she could only have dreamt of being able to take the pitch with the likes of Jenny Murphy, having watched her for so long over the years, and it is great to see, and it's really heartwarming.
Yeah, and it's great to see the picture of the two of them together. I'm sure they were chatting after, and maybe Jenny was given a bit of a debrief.
I'm sure Jenny felt a little bit older than she did at the start of that game.
But it's great to see with both Connacht and Leinster, like as we've mentioned, like there's on both sides those players with experience, and then, you know, on both sides a few people that are coming on for their first caps, and then that youth that's coming through. So it's great to see that handover experience, and definitely a lot of potential on both sides going forward.
Yeah, and like it's just shown that the pathways are there, you know, and that if we put in that funding and give opportunities for these younger players, that they will develop, and these pathways are there for them to then make that step up into provincial and then hopefully international.
And have you ever ended up playing with or against some of your role models?
Well, yeah, look, obviously, like when I started rugby late, you know, I didn't pick up rugby till I was 23, and I remember watching the likes of Nora Stapleton and those play, but I would have known Nora Stapleton particularly from her GAA days or anything else, and then I got to play with her at Old Belvedere and also be coached by her, but yeah, she definitely would be one that stands out for me. It's a very surreal feeling, I think, at first, when you go from watching somebody on the telly or kind of watching them in matches, and then all of a sudden you're on the same pitch with them or you're training with them. But it's nice to see that usually they're normal people too, just like the rest of us.
We caught up with Rashida Adeleki over Christmas, and we were chatting to her about racing, like Shawnee Miller, who's like a household name, and she said you just have to like have that few minutes of like stardom, fandom, and then just like
back to business,
get in your lane and crack on. And then in relation to Aoife McDermott and Sonia, we're talking about obviously like frenemies, but this takes it to another level. What do you think it was like for them to be facing off against each other?
Yeah, look, I'm sure once the fixtures came out, they knew that was going to happen fairly quickly once they were both in the squad. I actually saw on their Instagram they had breakfast together, which is really nice to see. So, you know, I'm sure there was a few jibes over breakfast going on and like that, wishing each other good luck, but not too much good luck in this, that and the other. But I wondered, did they have a bet on or anything else to see who would win, or if they could get any big tackle in on each other. But no, it is. It's nice to see, and I say it's nice to see with the family. I think we had another issue again, bringing up Ali Miller. I think Ali Miller a few years ago ended up playing for Connacht and playing against her little sister Grace Miller, who played with Leinster 1 year. So not the first time it's happened. And look, as I said, I think it's great to see, and hopefully we see it again down the line.
Yeah, a great day for the family, and we know they got their pictures and everything after, which is good. So in relation to Connacht, you mentioned that there was a lot of young players there. We're saying 14 players under the age of 22. Lyndon Jones, the head coach, noted that he was missing some key players like Bevan Parsons and Anna McGann due to the sevens, which we'll be watching out for over the next few weeks. How do you think that they'll assess that match overall?
You know what, I think, like, obviously they'll be disappointed they didn't get the win, but looking back on the game, they'll be very, very happy with massive portions of that game, and they'll be able to take those positives. As I said, if they come in to the Ulster game with that same level of defence and aggression and intensity, they'll absolutely blow Ulster away, you know, in the first few minutes. And I think, you know, had Connacht kept out Leinster last weekend until half time, that would have been an even bigger kind of confidence boost for them, or even if they had got points on the board, first of all, we could have seen maybe a different game. And so I think Connacht will go out there with that same defensive pressure, but also a little bit more attacking intensity, and they'd hope to get the first score on the board and then kind of push on from there. But they'll definitely take a lot of positives from that game. A few little things to work on in terms of maybe one-on-one tackling and stuff like that, and letting that game slip away from them when they were right there. But yeah, I'd say they'll have a good look at that and analyse that quite well, and be really positive going into that Connacht game, looking to get their first win.
Still to come is the discussion around the Munster-Ulster game from last weekend, and we also give you a preview of this weekend's fixtures. But before that, we have a new fun segment for the show. We're going to show you some pictures of athletes combined, and we want you to guess the two athletes from each picture. Stay tuned to watch myself and Hannah try our best at guessing who the athletes are, and also to find out the answers. We also have a few prizes to give away courtesy of Energia, so be sure to comment on the video below and we'll announce the winners next week. Okay, so after the game, it is now back to the rugby. Munster beat Ulster down in Musgrave Park at a score of 34-0. Wet and windy conditions, you were down at the match. Tell us the truth, what was it like? How bad was the weather?
Yeah, look, it was absolutely atrocious. It was freezing cold. Weather conditions said it wasn't meant to rain, and it absolutely lashed, particularly for the whole first half, like driving sheets of rain, and there was a swirling wind, and I was really worried about the quality of rugby we were going to get, just purely because it was so cold and so horrible out. And you know, Munster really surprised me. I knew they were going to be strong coming into this, defending champs. They had a really good squad, but you know, they really came out of the blocks fairly quickly, and they went on a rampage, scored 4 first half tries and got 2 in the second half. And the biggest thing is they kept Ulster to no score, you know, and a very, very difficult day for Ulster. And I chatted to Neil Alcorn before and after the match, and pre-game he was really excited about the prep they'd put in and the potential of some players. He lamented the loss of Claire Bowles quite late on, who was initially named in their starting squad but has travelled to New Zealand with the Sevens team, and she is a big blow for them because they too would have a big mix of youth and experience, but probably a little less so than Connacht, and would really struggle for even that kind of Irish internationals or current Irish internationals. They did have 3 members of of Blackrock who won the AIL, so that was very helpful to them, but unfortunately they were blown away by the strength and power that Munster had in the forwards and the back line, and they were no match for them really.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough to have a loss like that, and for Munster it was 31 minutes before they had registered getting a bonus point. Have you ever been on a team that's not managed to get any points on the board?
Yes, we lost to France in my last starting game in the Six Nations in 2021. I think it was like 53-0, I think maybe. Actually, we might have scored a penalty in that, but either way, it was a rough game. And like, you know, even getting no points on the board is very, very difficult, but even only getting, like, you know, even single-digit scores can be quite hard when you're being absolutely pummeled on the other side. And it's disappointing for Ulster, because I spoke to Beth Cregan as well pre-game, and she was really excited about the prep they had done and how, you know, these Interpro series can be kind of like a turning point. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm not saying the quality isn't there for Ulster, it's just we didn't see it on the day. You know, and they probably would have looked at this first game knowing they were coming into it was going to be a tough game for them to play in, and particularly it's a hard one to start the Interpros with, because it can have a knock-on effect. But they definitely would have been targeting this weekend's game against Connacht for sure. And
in terms of picking themselves back up, have you any advice for the players?
I suppose it's trying to take the positives out of the game. So Ulster definitely were much better in the second half. You know, they had a lot more possession. Their scrum was a lot more steady. You know, they had a couple of line breaks, but Munster managed to snag them back. And they kept Munster to 2 tries in the second half, one of which was literally right at the death. You know, so they did have improvements in the second half that we did see, and they're kind of the positives they need to look at. They can't just wash over the negatives they did have, such as conceding 4 tries in the first half, and they need to shore up some things. I thought their defensive line speed was very poor, and they were very passive. And for a team like Munster, who love to really run at you, you're just giving them opportunities to run at you, run around you, and win the gain line. And so they really need to change that coming into the Connacht game.
And a standout performance from Old Belvedere player Dervla Nicaverde. 2 tries, plenty of runs, and a position switch in the second half. What did you think of that? How did she play?
Yeah, look, again, I spoke about Derv and the great season she had, and she ended it with captain as Old Belvedere, and she is just a ball of energy. I've played with her at sevens for many years, and you know, she is not massive in height, sorry Derv, but she uses her physicality really well, and she's a background in martial arts, and she uses that to actually get over the ball in her defensive stature. But her footwork and her explosiveness off the mark is brilliant, and she just refuses to go down. She's massive toughness, and she didn't play for Munster in the last Interpros, and she was a great addition. And if you look at the back row that Munster had the weekend, you know, Dervla Nicaverde, who I've no doubt should be selected for this year's Six Nations, Dorothy Wall at 6, and Maeve O'Leary, another Irish international, at 7. You know, best back row we saw all weekend in those teams, and a very difficult one to come up against. And you know, Derv just was the shining light in that. And as you said, she came off at half time, thought she had a bit of a niggle, and they maybe were saving her for the big game next week. And then I saw her warming up to play as hooker, which is where she had her 15s first cap from, and that just shows her versatility, I suppose. And she loved it. She just loves to play. She was enjoying herself out there, and she bagged herself 2 tries and had a hand in a number of others, including a break from her own 22 off the back of a scrum. And as I said, she's just this ball of energy that refuses to go down, and I can't wait for the number 8 battle between herself and Hannah O'Connor this weekend.
And nice to have that versatility as a player.
Yeah.
In relation to Munster, they're being coached by Niamh Briggs. As you said, they're defending champions. How do you fancy their chances this year?
Yeah, look, obviously it'll all come down to this weekend's game, but right now they're kind of the team to beat. You know, whoever... I spoke to Niamh Briggs about this as well after the game, that... you know, while they had a brilliant first half and scored 4 first half tries and a couple of other opportunities, you know, and their backs and their forwards were scoring tries, the second half they weren't as good as they were in the first half. And I don't know, was it fatigue a little bit? Their first came back. Was it a little bit of complacency? Probably a mix of Ulster actually improving a lot as well and making it a little bit more difficult, as well as the conditions. But, you know, if Munster want to go in and win this Interpros, they'd have to put in a much better performance over the course of 80 minutes and not just in short bursts, because, you know, if they give Leinster a snip of a chance next weekend, you know, they'll do damage. And, you know, I do think it's going to come down to this game the weekend to see who the outright winner is.
And you've talked about some of the positive things from an Ulster perspective, but you mentioned earlier on that there's one Ulster team in the AIL. So talk to us a little bit about that and what the impact is.
Yeah, so like obviously we're all about the development of women's rugby around the country, and the AIL being the highest standard that we have, and we've 4 Dublin teams, you know, and unfortunately this year we saw that Malone had to pull out really quite close to the start of the season, and that left a number of players in the lurch. But they only have one team in Ulster, one option if they want to play AAL, and on the actual Ulster team sheet, a lot of those players were playing for teams that were a division below AAL, and unfortunately then that means that when you go and play Interpros, you know, that is a massive step up to what you've been used to, and unfortunately I think that's what took Ulster by surprise, the intensity and the level of physicality that Munster came at them with, and they kind of weren't expecting it and ended up on the back foot a little bit. But hopefully next year we'll see the reintroduction of another Ulster team, and I know that they're doing great work up there in the background, so hopefully we can get some more women's teams up there.
And in relation, I suppose, to all the teams, you know, they're playing with clubs. Sometimes we have other athletes that are involved in the Irish setup. How much time do the teams have together to come together and gel and you know, try and put out their best performance?
I think this year is probably one of the years in which they had an awful lot more prep than usual. I think they've been together as a group since the Energia AAL final, which was the last 3 weeks. But I know that from Leinster's perspective, that they had been doing sessions kind of back in the summer a little bit and then took a break in here and there. So they definitely would have had a lot of prep in the summer, that expecting another tournament that didn't happen and got pushed out a little bit. Probably then a break and play with the Energia AAL where they were all playing continuous rugby, and then I know they had a kind of a 3-week intense break, and a couple of them played a friendly last weekend just to kind of get back into the swing of things. But it is great to see that, obviously, you know, because regardless of the talent you have in a team, it takes time to gel and get used to certain attack plays and whatever way a coach wants to play. So you can tell that, you know, Munster have been around before. We talked about 11 of their players had been involved in the previous tournament, and you could tell through Leinster and the way they kind of played and gelled that they had played together before, you know, and there wasn't a huge mix of youth maybe that we saw with Connacht.
And is it tough, I suppose, to come in and try and gel with players quickly? Like you obviously mentioned there, Dervla, Maeve and Dorothy, like having consistency playing together in other setups. For those that don't, can it be tough to try and come together and try and make it all work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big thing in rugby is that you have, with your club, you might play a certain way and certain roles for certain positions, and then you go to your province and the coach wants you to play a different way, or your particular position is not the same as your role in club, and the calls and stuff like that are different. So that can take a few weeks to kind of get that into your head. And then also just to be able to execute that under pressure and everything else takes another thing. So the more time they have together, the better they're going to get. So I do anticipate that, you know, teams will be a lot more cohesive this weekend and then even next weekend after that.
Yeah, we definitely see it across a number of different sports when people are trying to, you know, whether it's gel, let's say, into provincial level or an Irish squad. We're going to head over now to Guess the Athletes, where you can see how myself and Hannah got on. We found some of it tough. We want to know your score, so comment below and let us know how many that you got right.
Ooh.
Niamh Briggs.
Eve Higgins.
Is it Eve?
Eve Higgins. No. Oh yeah. I think that's Eve Higgins. It's her. Oh.
Is it Niamh Briggs though?
No. I don't see Eve Briggs at all. Eve Higgins and...
Who are you seeing? Like, whose eyes are they?
Oh. It's definitely Eve Higgins.
Who's...
Two players. Lock it in.
I couldn't say who the other person is.
It's a player, so it's definitely not Niamh Briggs.
Yeah, it's not.
Current player.
You did say the name.
Oh. Me or her? Baven.
Is it?
I knew. You said no to me.
Oh, it didn't look like him at all. Okay, alright, that's a good one. That's tough. Yeah, it's Jenny and Nicole Fowley.
No, Mary Healy.
Okay, I'm locking in Nicole.
Go on. Are we right?
Yes.
Oh, good shout, good shout. What? This is a child.
Is it a combination of two?
Yeah, and one's a former player.
A former?
Is it Mairead Coyne?
You're not good at this game.
I got Nicole. I backed you on Eve. I backed you on Eve. I got Nicole. But like, is that not like a young Ray? Like
a current captain of an Irish team
Nicola Friday.
and a former captain of an Irish team.
Oh, Irish team.
Oh, Lucy Mahal. Definitely the hair.
Yeah, it's the right shape of the face.
Whoever has that face is so young.
You're gonna kick yourself for this one. Former player of the year. Plays for Bristol.
Oh, Claire Malloy. Of course it's Claire Malloy.
It's so tough. Some of the combinations are really hard.
Who the hell is that?
I know who it is. I know who it is.
Who is it?
Have a good look at that.
Is it Emer?
Like you're looking in the mirror.
Is it me? I don't see that at all.
There you go.
How did I get Dorothy and not myself?
I don't know.
Emer.
Yeah, there's no question.
Is there anyone else with Emer?
Doesn't it look like exactly like it? I think it's someone with dark hair.
Nicola Friday. The eyebrows got me.
No, I was gonna guess Amy.
That's it.
Oh my god, go back there. That just looks like Emer.
Doesn't it? Isn't it like the same? Are her eyes different?
I can't believe I didn't get myself. I was like, I don't see this at all.
I don't know that person. It's just some of the combinations when people are quite different. Yeah. It like. So that's what they
like I got Dorothy and you were like, hello.
So that's what everyone would look like if they procreated together. Very good.
Oh, that one is so weird.
We certainly found them pretty tough. So comment below and let us know how many that you got right. Coming up this weekend, we have a huge clash. We have last year's finalists Munster and Leinster together at 12:15 in Musgrave Park and be live on TG Cahir. Munster won the final last year 19-7. How do you think it's going to go this weekend?
Yeah, look, it's obviously hard to judge. I think it'll be a tightly contested match. I really hope I'll be down there this weekend, so I really hope the conditions are a little bit better. Not just for me personally, but also for the quality of rugby on show, you know. And we have two very talented sides. It'll be interesting to see, do Leinster make many changes considering the impact their bench had. I would be very surprised if Munster changed it up a little bit. We might see Chloe Pearce start, who was just coming back from injury, you know, and she was player of the match in the final last year. So it will be interesting to see, but this is the game of the weekend. You know, this is the game that for me is going to decide the Interpro title, unless we see a shock in the third round of games. But from what I've seen, you know, Munster with the quick starts and the way they go and the key players really stepping up, they seem like they have the slight edge. But overall, I would say that Leinster's depth gives them a massive advantage as well. It wouldn't surprise me if this game ended something like 23-21. I can't even call it who it's going to be. I'm trying to keep my Leinster bias off and say obviously want Leinster to win, but you know, I just really hope it's a really good game of rugby. As I said, Munster need to put in that performance and start fast and keep that for that 80 minutes or at least 70 minutes or so, whereas Leinster can afford to have that slow start and want to get points on the board early, and we'll see do they still have that firepower to bring on from the bench. Okay, so give us the official prediction there. 23-21 to one of the teams. Very vague. Okay, so later on at 2:30, Ulster are going to face Connacht in Kingspan Stadium. Both teams are going to be looking to bounce back. Obviously, we had a competitive enough game from Connacht, a tough game for Ulster. The last time that they met, they actually drew 12-all. So what are your predictions for that game? Yeah, look, I think going into this game, based on performances we saw last weekend, that Connacht would be in my opinion, the team that looked more likely to win. However, you know, we've seen before that past performances mean nothing, and it's all about what you put on the day, and Ulster will be smarting from their defence. And obviously being a home game, they would want to really start strong and get on the board fairly quickly. I was really impressed by Ella Durkin playing at 10. She usually kind of plays centre, so interesting to see what they do there, but she's a bright spark for them who'll be looking to kind of lead her charges. I still think Connacht have the edge. Some of those young players coming through are really, really impressive. I really like the look of Ava Ryder on the wing. She didn't get enough ball though, so hopefully Nicole can kind of get that to her, and that experienced partnership of Mary Healy and Nicole Fowley will be huge. Just based on what I've seen, I think I would go with Connacht probably 19-10. I'm going to give Ulster the benefit of the doubt. I really hope they score, because it can really change a team, the confidence you get just even one score.
And there seems to be a lot of excitement around the competition this year, which is obviously great to see. And there's, plenty of opportunity for people to either, tune in on TG Cahir, but also to go down to the matches. Like, they're all around the country, so there's lots of opportunity for people to go down and enjoy the tournament. For those that maybe aren't familiar with some of the players, who are, I suppose, some of the key players that you'd recommend people to watch out for in the two different matches?
So I suppose if you're looking at the Connacht Ulster game, which has actually been shown live on BBC Northern Ireland this weekend, from an Ulster perspective, you'd be looking at the likes of Ella Durkin that I mentioned at 10. They also have a really good player who came off the bench and I think should be starting this weekend, in Amber Redmond, who plays 9, so that could be a really nice combination they have. From a Connacht perspective, Irish international Laura Feely obviously puts in a big shift. Orla Dixon at centre, and as I said, Ava Ryder on the wing. From a Munster perspective, there's plenty of players who are trying to put their hand up for Irish selection. So Aoife Doyle scored a lovely try at the weekend. She probably has the best feet in the Energia AIL. She'd be one that'll be looking to do a bit of damage, along with Nicole Cronin and Enya Breen, that 10-12 partnership. Again, both of them kind of vying for a 10 jersey as well with Ireland. So we'll really see with Leinster this weekend. There might be a battle between Dana O'Brien at 10 and Nicole Fowley at 10, but Enya Breen obviously wanted to put her hand up and put in a good performance. And then it's a huge battle of the back rows in this Munster-Leinster game. So I've no doubt we'll see the same back row from Munster and Dorothy Wall, Derval Nickervard and Maeve O'Leary. And then there was an injury to Ali Coleman this weekend, so I'm actually not sure who Leinster might bring in. I would love to see Emma Murphy back. She tore her ACL a couple of times now and she's back, so it'd be great to see her get a go. But Hannah O'Connor from 8 will be looking to lead that pack and put her hand up. And also, I would love to see Claire Gorman back in. She got her debut last week on the wing for Leinster. Herself and Anna Doyle linked up really, really well, but Claire Gorman got injured, so hopefully her injury's not too bad and she can make a case for herself for the upcoming Six Nations.
Certainly something we're looking forward to this weekend, and as are you. So thanks for all that insight, Hannah. That's it for this week's episode of the Her Sport Interpro Rugby Show, brought to you in association with Energia. Think of the possibilities. Tune in next week as we will review the huge clash between Leinster and Munster, as well as the game with Connacht and Ulster, to see who comes out on top. Keep involved in the conversation and we'll see you again in the next episode.
Her Sports Rugby Show, brought to you by Energia. Think of the possibilities.